like the wild, wild west. No credibility, no medical background, nothing. Women historically have always made the health decisions in their home. What's ironic is they're the ones that are being dismissed. There is a huge correlation between perimenopause and menopause and divorce.
When things become oversaturated, what are you actually putting into your body?
So some of these big influencers stacking peptides on peptides on peptides, we don't know the long-term implications of that.
Listen, today we're going to talk about empowering women and really why they have been, we'll call it, set aside as far as health. They've been secondary in a lot of ways. You may not have known this, but we have an expert today that's joining us, Susan Malzoni. Now, she's not only a great lady, great woman, she's had a lot of success in her own life, but she's also passionate about sharing what is important for women and ladies today. You know, this is something, Susan, I've known you for several years now, and we've become great friends, and it's just been interesting to me to watch your trajectory and growth in life, in your influence in life, now being, I'll get it right, appointed as the ambassador for women's health, U.S. Health and Human Services. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
And, you know, as you know, we always talk about things to invest in. And a lot of times when you think of investments, we think about money. And obviously, I have several companies that help families with wealth and taxes. But I think one of the biggest things we need to be talking about in addition is our health.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a place where you get a lot of wealth just to try and save your health without balancing it on the journey, it's kind of like, what was it all for?
Exactly.
And so this has been a kind of a mission for you. You've had a couple strategic connections, relationships. You've really kind of shared and kind of, we'll call it, pushed vision in a lot of ways in this industry. So let's talk a little bit about why have women been, I'll call it, overlooked or secondary in some ways in relation to health in the past, and how is that changing?
Well, interestingly, it has been. Until recently, women were never even included in the trials for medicine and medical trials. It's always been men. And I think one of the reasons was the fluctuation women have in hormones, or maybe, you know, I'm not even really sure. There's no definitive answer as why women have been overlooked. But the good news is that has changed. But it had been going on until recently. And it wasn't until these, you know, women's groups that are involved in the medical industry stood up and spoke about it, you know, change wouldn't have happened. So, you know, I'm really grateful for the organizations that have done that.
Well, and I think, Susan, one of the things that I love about what you're doing now is obviously in knowing you over the years and watching you, you know, you have your motives are pure.
Yeah.
Like your desire is to really, we'll call it, in my opinion, add value and empower people, specifically women,
Exactly.
To understand things they need to be paying attention to.
Right.
And, you know, the challenge that I think we run into today in our world today with Instagram and TikTok and all of these other social media platforms is there are so many 30 to 60 minute professional, you know, health warriors, so to speak, that share all of these thoughts and ideas. And it can be challenging, especially with AI.
Oh.
You know, I remember I was watching a clip the other day and I sent it to somebody. I think I sent it to our producer and I was like, check this out. He's like, dude, that's all AI.
I know.
Like, I didn't even know.
I know, it's crazy.
So how do we fight through that current? Because, you know, we're starting to see some change, right? You get this appointment as an ambassador, which is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
And I want to talk in just a minute as far as what that actually means and what it looks like. But the big wave that we kind of have to get through, in my opinion, or the wall, whatever you want to call it, is all of these challenges of fake news on social accounts.
Right.
So what are your thoughts in relation to that? I mean, people see things. How do they navigate some of this?
It's very complicated. And so people like me and the other ambassadors that were appointed are there for that reason, to really, you know, sift through all this crazy talk. There's so many biohackers and unauthorized or unqualified, you know, health professionals now. I won't name any names, but, you know, some that, you know, used to be used car salesmen, honestly, like legitimately, and are now super famous in the whole, you know, health and wellness industry with no credibility, no medical background, nothing. And there's a lot of influencers who are the same. You know, they're promoting things that make no sense, you know, urine therapy and all these other crazy things that, you know, you just have to think, is this common sense? Does this make sense to me? You know, certain things do, certain things don't. I've always been a huge proponent of peptides, as you know. I've changed my position on that a little bit. I'm now really considering that this market has gotten so saturated. There's so much misinformation. And there's such a demand for the peptides because they've become famous with all these influencers. There's very little regulation, and we don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
When I started peptides, which was years and years ago, I knew exactly the pharmacy that made it. It was a compound pharmacy. It was prescribed by my doctor, and I knew all the, pros and cons to it. Now it's a free-for-all. It's like the wild, wild west. Yeah. So I have taken a step back I was a huge proponent of peptides. I still think they have great value, but I think people have to be really, really cautious how they proceed on that.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you're in a situation, we live in a world today where people are so, taken back and induced, if you will, by social ads. They're up late at night or looking something to buy this, to buy that. Now, you can't obviously get peptides that way, but the question becomes, when things become oversaturated, what are you actually putting into your body? And I don't know that people really think about that.
I don't think they thought it through. And all these stacks, some of these big influencers, they're like stacking peptides on peptides on peptides. And we don't know the long-term implications of that.
Yeah.
I never recommend to anyone to take more than one at a time. So actually what your body, how your body is responding. And taking more than they're supposed to dose, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Because they want to build bigger muscle. Yeah. It's almost like an addiction. So I always recommend to take one at a time and never say to stack them. And I see how my body responds. But, there are no long-term studies on these things.
What do you think has caused you to shift your perspective? And you're not saying, by the way, what she's not saying out there is that she thinks they're bad or evil or wrong. What she's saying is it's time to take some pause and evaluate, what are we actually doing here?
Right.
It's almost like, it's like the old ancient adage that's been around forever. People are just continually looking for the fountain of youth.
They are.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with trying to maximize your health, your wealth, the way you look, the way you feel. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But doing it in a way that has sound mind.
Right.
What do you think has caused you to really change some of your thought position over the years on that?
Well, social media has really opened up this industry to anyone who creates a persona that speaks with authority, that somehow looks good. People want to be like them. And they've capitalized on that. And, I take this, this peptide, I take this, I take whatever. And there's no, everyone wants to jump on that bandwagon. I want to look like him or her. I want to, do this or that. But there's no scientific basis for that whatsoever. And as I said, no one knows the long-term repercussions. Now, if you were working with a doctor, your own physician, and he says, BPC 157 might be, beneficial to help you heal from an injury, and here's where I source mine from, hey, go for it. But don't buy anything on the internet.
Yeah.
It could come from, but China. It can come from a lot of different places.
Well,
we just don't know the purity.
There was some, and I don't know if you're referencing this, but there was some article and things about some peptide that was being sent that you could very easily buy, that just the compounds of where it came from was just not clean.
Not clean.
And it was creating massive problems.
Yeah, there's many places, many, illegitimate laboratories, compound pharmacies that source from who knows where. So I just caution everyone, get them from a real physician that knows where they're sourced from, period. And then, try one at a time. Never stack them, in my opinion. But,
That's good thoughts. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like anything else. You want to see how your body responds and what that looks like. Sure. So let's talk about this ambassadorship for women with U.S. Health. Like, first off, where did this all come from? And why do you think you were selected? I mean, obviously, I have some reasons as to why, but what are your thoughts as to where this all came about?
Well, this is actually a new appointment. It never existed before. And, I've worked with Secretary Kennedy. I mean, I've been friends with him for a long time and helped him actually we produced the National Conference on Women's Health along with his whole team. So that was really important. Putting that team together of, women's health experts in Washington, D.C., that happened in March. It was an amazing, amazing conference. It helped a lot of women. There was over 2,000 people that attended. And we pulled it together in 5 weeks, which is extraordinary.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was really good. So everyone who was involved in that, the speakers and women's health experts, were named by the Department of Health and Human Services as ambassadors because they did play a huge role in educating a lot of people. So we wanted to continue that on besides the conference, outside into the real world. And so what we do is we just educate people. We create content. We put them on our social media platforms. many of us are speakers. We go to conferences and speak on women's health and, just give tools and resources to help women empower themselves for their health.
So Susan, let me ask you this question. In the beginning of the show here, you were talking about the idea of women not being included in certain studies and things. How would you say, if you had to list maybe in an order of just a couple, how would you say women have been, quote, underserved from being able to kind of maximize their health? And then let's talk about some of the solutions that you're seeing that are available, that are out there, that women need to be thinking about. Maybe that they're not hearing, they're hearing conflicting ideas, but how have they kind of been underserved other than the studies? They're just, what would you say there? What would be your thoughts?
Well, women often are dismissed. They go to the hospital, cardiovascular health, cardiovascular incidences are the leading cause of death in women.
Wow.
No, most men don't know that.
I would typically think that's a male issue. That's kind of what I've heard or thought of.
Yeah, it is. Most people, that's the common perception. But women die from cardiovascular incidences more than any other illness, more than cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. But oftentimes they go to the hospital and they're dismissed by the emergency room. You're having a panic attack, or maybe it's anxiety. Are you tired? Or they're just, diminished. And that needs to change, which I think it is. I'm a national volunteer for the American Heart Association, and I take this very personally. My mother died of a heart attack. My late husband died of a heart attack. So it is a very, a topic very close to my heart. And I just want women to feel more empowered, that they need to speak up for themselves. When they are not feeling well, they go in and insist on getting a test. Don't let anyone send you home, or dismissed. You need to speak up for yourself and just say, this is what's happening to me. I'm concerned I'm having a cardiac incident. Please test me. Like, demand it. If someone dismisses you, report them. This paradigm has to change.
So if you had to add on any additional thoughts for ladies, women out there that are watching this, we live in a culture today. I'm old enough to remember, I'm going to call it the Leave It to Beaver generation. Yeah, where the men kind of pretty much ran the show and the women were at home and whatever. And obviously that paradigm has shifted in many ways. And I think there's a lot of positives to that. There's some challenges, but positives. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're seeing women being involved in a lot more things, which is great. But I think sometimes they don't necessarily, it's the old adage of a lot of people don't know what they want because they don't know what's available.
Right.
So if you were to sit side by side or across the table from a woman right now and say, if I were to empower you, I would share these couple things to you. Besides demanding a test, what other things would you share, Susan, to say, these are the things that you need to be thinking about as a woman?
Yeah, there's a lot, because interestingly, even in the Leave It to Beaver generation, women historically have always made the health decisions in their home.
That's true.
What's ironic is they're the ones that are being dismissed.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who always make decisions for their kids' health care, their husband's health care. And oftentimes their health care gets put aside because they're busy taking care of everyone, because they're, natural caretakers typically. So it is kind of ironic that they have not been included in all of these things up to now. But, moving forward, I would say to women, you need to really think of yourself first. It's kind of like, the analogy of put your own, mask on in the airport, in an incident on an airplane before you help others. And it's the same thing, because when a woman's health is diminished or they're out or sick, you see a household falls apart. So they need to really start taking control of their own health. Do the diagnostic testing. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll do it next month. And then they don't, years pass. And that's where, problems start. If you're not testing yourself, doing your annual breast exams, your annual pelvic exams, which a lot of women don't even do. It's not part of standard protocol from gynecologists, which is really odd. I pay for it out of pocket.
Why do you think that's not included?
I'm not sure. They have these specific standards, pap smears. First of all, it was every year everyone had to do a pap smear, but there were so many false positives that they eliminated it. Now they only have it every 5 years. Okay. But, the reality is, if everyone had a pelvic ultrasound every year, just like they would have a mammogram or a breast ultrasound, they would detect so many forms of cancer ahead of time. Wow. It would save so much taxpayer money. I mean, why not do things preventatively?
Yeah, exactly.
And this has always been my big question. the government's making great strides right now. The Department of Health and Human Services are doing a lot for women's health. They took the black box warning off of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, but they should incorporate a lot more preventative things for women. We just have more body parts to be concerned about.
You do.
I
mean, when you think about it, I heard Jim Gaffigan one time, and it was funny. I thought it was funny. He was talking about babies.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard him before.
Yeah,
I
have. He's hysterical.
He does a skit on women, like, birthing a baby, having a baby, growing a baby, delivering a baby, feeding a baby with their body. And he's like, and when you think of the male's, kind of contribution to life, it's kind of pathetic. I thought it was kind of funny. But to your point, there's a lot of other moving parts. Yeah. Not that men aren't important in their own way and women are important in their own way, but it's this idea of empowering ladies. And I think, HRT, I just want to pause on that real quick. Why do you think the black box talk real quick about what that means to the listener? It's like, what is she talking about?
Right. Well, up to now, hormone replacement therapy for women have come with a whole list of warnings. And they're still warnings, but they've scared people to believe that they shouldn't be taking them. When the actual data shows that women who are on properly monitored hormone replacement therapy have so many better outcomes, less Alzheimer's, better cardiovascular health, better muscle mass.
Yeah.
The list goes on of the benefits from hormone replacement therapy. So the fact that all these years women have been cheated out of that because doctors were taught, I got to warn these people because they could get cancer and I don't want to be responsible. They just are just repeating what they've been told by certain, agencies.
It's really just the idea of, when people think about this, like, oh, you shouldn't have to take something, but your body is not producing as much of what it was when you were younger. And all you have to do is be not 20 years old anymore and realize that when you walk up the stairs or jump off of a little whatever, your experience is different than what your body operates differently.
Exactly.
And you're just replenishing it with the fuel that it needs.
It's called replacement for a reason.
Right.
It's hormone replacement therapy.
Right.
So I started it way before I even went into menopause. My doctor was very progressive when I was living in LA. He was excellent. He was one of the, the kings of hormone replacement therapy. And he thought, we need to start this therapy, this, replacement therapy way before you go into it. So your body is naturally, it never really ever goes through a serious shock. My situation was a little different because I had some incidents.
And I just want to cut you off there real quick because I just want you to hear what she just said there. I think it's really important. Your body not going through a serious shock of kind of like full and then empty. And imagine it this way. You own a home. We're currently in Palm Beach. You own a home and there's a storm, right? And your power goes out. There's an electrical shock to your home system unless you have some type of surge protection, a generator backup, maybe a power wall from Tesla, continuing the flow of that energy until the flow of energy from FPL or whatever turns back on. So I just want you to understand what she's saying there. This isn't this idea of just wait until your tank is empty from the hormones that your body naturally produces. Right. Like keep the tank level and where it should be along the way. That's essentially what you're saying, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, when your body's tapped out, which, adrenally, your adrenals shut down and you stop producing these things there's so many different factors too. And everyone's different. I always tell everyone, it's not one size fits all. What works for me is not going to work for you. Everybody's body is so unique. But the one thing that is for sure is everyone will go through menopause. And the way
every woman.
I'm sorry, not everyone.
I was like, wait a minute. This is brand new to me. I didn't.
Women's health.
Yeah.
So I'm only speaking for women right now.
Yeah.
But every woman, biological woman.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Yes, let's clarify that.
Yeah.
Will at one point go through menopause.
Yeah.
And so managing that as seamlessly as possible is the goal, because, and these are all, and there are documents about this, but there is a huge correlation between perimenopause and menopause and divorce. So think of the financial repercussions.
Yeah.
Men will be interested in knowing about that.
Yeah.
The importance that men support their wives while they go through these changes and make sure that they are taking the care of themselves and getting the hormone replacement they need will avoid so many problems.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
because some women do not handle menopause, well.
Well, at all, yeah.
At all. It affects their brain. It affects their mood. It affects so many things. They gain weight, which, not all men like. There's a lot. Their libido goes down.
I don't think I've met a man that likes that. You said not all men. Maybe some do.
Maybe some do. I'm sorry. I don't
kidding.
want to generalize, but menopause and perimenopause really affects a lot of things. It puts a huge strain on relationships. And if you do look at the data, it does show that a lot of the divorces that happen are in that time frame. So let's look at it from a financial perspective, because you're a money guy. Wouldn't it makes more sense to keep your wife happy and healthy and on track with the proper hormone replacement than going through a horrible, tedious, expensive divorce?
Yeah. And I think the conversation, yes, and I think the conversation is, for those of you that are watching this or listening to this, it's not just for the men out there to say, hey, let's do this, but it's also for the ladies out there.
Well, for sure.
There's some very stubborn women that seem to know everything.
True.
And are not open to new ideas. And there's a lot of stubborn men that are the same. And I think the idea that I'm hearing from you, and that I've kind of observed as we've had conversation over the years, and we even talked about this when we were kind of off air talking about our children.
Yeah.
Just this idea of staying curious in the world.
Yes.
Right? Don't ever put yourself in there are certain absolute truths. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
However, this idea of how we evolve and the knowledge that we have and understanding of how our bodies work and can collaborate with things, we want to stay curious. And so let me ask you this question. Let's say a lady's watching out there, a woman out there is watching this, and she's saying, you know what, I like what I'm hearing. I like what Susan's saying, but I'm just not sure where to go.
Right.
Like I'm in a place where maybe I have a doctor or a physician that has been great. They've been a good friend. And maybe, Susan, maybe they're a little bit too heavy on the pharmaceutical side of life, right?
Yeah.
That could happen.
Sure.
And you're just trying to be in a place where you're living an active life. Maybe you have kids, you might be working as well, or whatever the story is. And they're just not like, where do I go to get great information? Because they can hear things here, and this can empower them and encourage them. But what are some practical thoughts that you would have that might say, hey, these are some steps that you want to be thinking about when you're looking for a provider or someone medically to assist you on this journey?
Well, the pros and cons of social media, as we discussed, there's some really bad things because there's a lot of people who should not be on that are giving crazy ideas. However, there are a lot of resources online. There's a lot of really good doctors, women doctors, that do give a lot of free advice online. So if you're, restricted financially, a lot of the really good doctors, they only do private practice and they don't take insurance.
Cash basis.
Yeah, concierge or whatever you want to call it. But there are a lot of, there is a movement now towards functional medicine. And functional medicine doctors are trained, in conventional medicine, Western medicine, but they also embrace other things. So if I were to make a recommendation for someone who is struggling and doesn't know where to turn, I would look, and if you're relying on and paying with your insurance, look for a functional medicine doctor, because they typically are a little more open-minded, follow trends more, stay up to date with actual data versus what they learned back in school. Right now,
they're constantly a student.
They're constantly learning. They're open. Their minds are more open. A lot of conventional docs are they repeat what they learned in medical school and don't continue on learning.
Why do you think that is?
It's just...
Maybe they're burnt out from learning.
Maybe, it's kind of a factory. You've got patient after patient after patient, and it's all, ching-ching with the insurance company, do the bare minimum, just get them out the door. And, it's really unfortunate. Our medical system is broken.
Big time.
It really broken.
Yeah.
And hopefully in this administration, under the, Robert, Secretary Kennedy can make some changes. He's already moving in the right direction. He's now introducing, dietary information in medical school, which didn't exist before. Diet, how important diet is to a diet.
Yeah.
And to your health. That never existed before. How is that possible?
It's crazy to think, to me, it's crazy to think of the reality that, we've just moved, and this is kind of just evidence in our social media society today. Most folks are interested, in a quick fix, which is why all of this stuff sells. They're not willing to take the time. They're kind of like, la, la, la. They don't want to believe the red pill, blue pill, that, they don't want to believe the other side of the story, so to speak. And so I think it's so important for people to say, I got one life. I got one journey on this planet. Like, how do I want to live it? And I remember Zig Ziglar used to say, he's like, for several years, I decided to be overweight. Now, I understand certain people have certain types of problems that could aid in that or whatever, but he shared this and I thought, isn't it interesting? He decided to be overweight. And he said, the reason that I decided to be overweight is because I never accidentally ate anything. So it's always choices. And if we choose to eat the wrong food, that's calorie deficient, that's just not good for us, we're going to have the results in our body. Just like if you went and you filled your car up instead of 93 gas or 87 gas and you put, kerosene or water in it, it's not going to run properly. And I think that's so important. So step one that I heard you say for the ladies out there is look for a functional medicine doctor.
Yeah.
What would be another thought of them empowering themselves so they can feel like they can have a good conversation with the doctors?
Well, again, there are a lot of resources online, with AI particularly. AI can work to your benefit. It could be terrible, but we don't know. But there is a lot of information out there, and you never should rely on AI as a doctor, as your medical advice. But it can inform you of a lot of things that maybe you're embarrassed to ask a doctor, or maybe you don't have a doctor that you can ask those questions to. So it is a good resource.
So maybe step two, not to interject there, but step two is don't be embarrassed to ask questions.
Exactly.
That you need to ask.
Right.
It's your body and your life.
And ask your friend.
Right?
Yes. Ask your other women friends or male friends, whoever is got an issue. Ask them. Men typically don't like to ask their friends about, issues they have. Women do though. Hey, has this ever happened to you? And if so, how did you deal with it? And going back to your point about the quick fix, our society is based on quick fixes and very different from Europe and other countries. But I can tell you there are so many other ways around. Like, we are a society of overuse of, anti-anxiety, anti-depression medicine, that so many people I know could be off of that with just simple changes to their lifestyle, simple supplements, dietary changes, exercise. Exercise is so important. It's so important for your mental health.
Yeah.
Not only your body. If you exercise regularly, the amount of HRT or hormone replacement therapy, you need less because your body produces more hormones naturally. So just living a really healthy lifestyle as best as you can. Not everyone can spend, an hour in the gym every day, but simple things. There are simple, free things you can do that can help you empower yourself.
Well, and it's interesting to me, we were talking off air as well, and, my son's going to be going to a school that's going to help him kind of be on track a little bit. Yeah. And now this is in relation to the guys for a second, but they were just talking about how boys learn differently, how their brain works differently. The blood flow after they've sat down for 20 minutes, science shows shuts off to the thinking part of the brain. And there was an example of the guy that was touring us through this school said, you see the desks in the back, and they're stand-up desks, and the boys have the ability to get up and go stand at that desk at any time. And they had a little bar that he put his foot on that was like this. He calls it the fidget bar. And he's like, have you ever seen boys in class where they're tapping their foot because they're fidgety?
Right.
And so they can stand there at a stand-up desk with a fidget bar during class, and that movement helps them learn.
Right.
Right. And I just thought to myself, isn't that interesting? It's like, I say this because, Susan, what I thought of is oftentimes the fixes that help us the most are right in front of us.
Of course.
We just have to make some changes in what we're doing. And I think part of that starts from being unplugged from the noise of the world and kind of being able to think again. You mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's just kind of use common sense. But I got to believe that we're in a culture today, unfortunately, that there's nothing more uncommon than common sense, the famous quote that we've heard for years. So what we're doing is, what you're doing in many ways is pushing the tide, striving to push the tide, right?
Yeah.
Back to the reality of what is common sense in relation to women's health.
Exactly.
And I think that's so important.
It really is. It really is. Women are in a place right now that they feel they're scared. They are, they have a lot of these autoimmune issues that didn't exist before. And
where do you think they're coming from?
I don't know, young people, like that. I I never had those questions when I was in my 20s or 30s, like, why, I have anxiety. I didn't even hear that word. I didn't know what fibromyalgia was. That didn't exist, by the way. I mean, that was not even a label when I was growing up. There's so many autoimmune diseases right now that young women specifically are suffering from. And I want to believe, I don't want to believe, I know it's from environmental toxins, it's our food, it's them being bombarded by plastics all day long. We're drinking out of plastic, we're wearing plastic, we're dousing ourselves in all sorts of, perfumes and cosmetic products and lotions that are disrupting all of our hormones and causing havoc. We have this epidemic of autoimmune issues right now, and that is plaguing women. It was one of the topics we discussed in the conference, was a whole panel just on autoimmune, because it has really become a major issue in our country. And I do believe it has a lot to do with the environment and a change of lifestyle.
What do you think realistically, practically, when you say change of environment? Because people aren't going to just move to the Amazon rainforest.
No.
Like, what does that look like practically for someone listening to this? Like, what are some small steps?
I can tell you many, many small steps, and you can incorporate them as you can.
Yeah.
Create a clean environment in your home, at least, because that's an environment you can actually control, right? No plugins. Don't put a plug-in in your house to make your house smell good. Don't put some candle you buy at the grocery store. Nothing that smells artificial. Those are all synthetic. They disrupt your endocrine. They disrupt your whole system. So none of those fragrances. Don't use any strong cleaning products. Don't use, I'm not going to name names, but you know what I'm talking about. The most common ones. You should not be using those. There's many online, or many you can make at home with vinegar. Vinegar and some essential oils. They work perfect to clean. So all the products you use on your body, that should be super important to be clean. Get fragrance-free lotions. Scan them, like download the Yuka app. Yuka is an app that you can actually scan the barcode and see how it rates as far as toxicity.
How do you spell that?
Yuka.
Okay.
You can scan all the products. I go to, CVS before I decide what shampoo to buy or whatever. I scan it on my phone, and it'll rate, either, I don't remember the rating system, but it's either, I think it's out of 100. If it rates 60, it means it's good. You want it to rate 100 so that it's an absolutely clean product. And there are a lot out there, actually. Even in a normal store, you don't have to buy it from, an expensive store. You can buy it from CVS. So take in mind your personal, the personal things you put on your body. Clothing, be mindful of that. You should not be walking around all day, especially women or men, with polyester on. It's not good for your reproductive system. Women walk around all day long with these exercise clothes that are made with plastic. We're drinking plastic bottles, wearing plastic clothes, surrounding ourselves with artificial smells, putting all this artificial stuff on our body. Think of the toll that's taking on especially on a woman's body, who are regulated monthly by certain things. All these artificial things are really harmful. And then not to mention what's in our food system.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about Europe. I mean, obviously, I know you're headed there. We just came back a little bit ago. I mean, the food there, it's unbelievable.
I know.
You go to Italy or whatever, and you're eating, and you can just you could eat a full pizza. And I'm like, I don't feel bloated. I feel great. You know what I mean?
Well, we've talked about that before.
I know.
Last show, we talked about my son was in school there, and, it's, well, I don't want to name names either, but there is a product that's sprayed on our crops, on our grains, glyphosate. That is a known carcinogenic. It causes it wreaks havoc on our bodies, and it is being sprayed on our crops in this country. I was hoping it wouldn't be anymore, but it is still. So I always encourage everyone to buy glyphosate. If you're going to eat oats, buy glyphosate-free oats. If you're going to eat bread, buy organic. Don't buy anything that could be sprayed with that. All those conventional cereals you buy in boxes, most of those grains have been sprayed with glyphosate. So that really can disrupt your gut. And your gut-brain connection is major. So the one thing we have cut out of our home is almost all of the grains. We eat sourdough bread, which, my daughter-in-law makes and other people make. We eat that. It's always a great form of carbs. Fresh fruit is a great way to eat carbs.
Okay.
But eliminate the grains that you don't know where they came from. Heritage grains, old grains are great to eat if you can find them. But conventional, bread and things you get in a box typically have problems that will wreck your gut and ultimately wreck your mood because it affects your brain.
Listen, as you're watching this, I want to challenge you. I know, Susan just shared a lot of information, and sometimes, we can hear a lot of things and be like, wow, that sounded interesting. I need to do that, or I should do this, or I should do that. And then we kind of just go along with our day and we forget it, right? So I'm going to challenge you to slow the tape, rewind. You can't rewind anymore today. Be kind, rewind, right? But rewind a little bit and play and pause with a pad of paper and a pen and write down some of the things that she said. I promise you, if you implement some of these small, simple, really inexpensive, sometimes free ideas, it will make a big impact on your life. And Susan, I want to ask you another question. What are your thoughts in relation to women today, the effects of overconsumption with their cell phone? And I'm not talking about 5G and all this other stuff, even though that's a thing.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about just this idea of scrolling, comparative living, looking at other people on Instagram or other places, just maybe being in a situation. I love, again, what I was a Zig Ziglar guy growing up when I sold books door to door years ago. And, back then they didn't have social media, but they did have TV, obviously. And one of the things that he mentioned was it's not about what looking at the screen does to you, even though there are effects, is more what it keeps you from doing.
That's true too.
And so my question to you is, now we live in a generation where we got the screen in front of us all the time.
No.
And I mean, it's almost like if we leave somewhere, we're like, where's my phone, right? What are your thoughts as far as the effects of social to just phone in general on women today in our culture?
I mean,
it's massive.
But
what are some of your thoughts?
It's so detrimental. I think it is one of the leading causes for mental health right now with young people. Older people. I'm going to talk about women only specifically right now. I think my generation is not heavily reliant upon it as the younger generation, teenagers. I think it is one of the driving factors for mental illness right now. Our brains are not wired to look at that much information at one time, to process emotionally the scrolling. I get, of course, because I'm involved in the dog world and I participate sometimes on social media related to dog issues. I get fed all these things. And I notice myself, my mood throughout the day. If I'm fed a lot of sad things related to dogs, it affects me. And then I'll see, And
that doesn't just affect you, that affects how you respond and interact with other people, right?
Of course. Our brains are not wired to process all of that. Sadness, happiness, emotion, envy, all of the emotions are being processed at such a rapid speed. While you scroll, it's like something sad, something happy, something motivational, something I'm jealous of. Wow, why is that person on a boat? Whatever.
So you're living in a constant state of overstimulation.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So how do you regulate your nervous system from that? How do you reset yourself? And it's something I tell a lot of women. I tell a lot of people how to do that. There are many methods to doing it. But one, starting off, put some pause on the cause.
Yeah.
The cause of it is this constant scrolling. So if you need to use social media like I do, I use social media for the good of people, but I use it at a specific time of the day and then I turn it off. It's not like, oh, where's my phone? Let me go check to see what this person is doing. I'll turn it on in the morning. I open it. I'm not turning it on. I'm opening it up in the morning and I open it up at night. And I check my messages. If I have something to post, I'll post it, but it's not a constant day thing of let me just, do this dead scrolling, this constant scrolling, because I know it does affect me mentally and it affects everyone.
Well, I think it's a huge deal. And you talked about it. Look at the cause. And I've often talked about the idea of like, what would your life look like? What would your mind look like if you just put yourself in a place where you said, okay, we've talked about fasting before as well and the benefits of that with food.
I just came off a 3-day fast. Today was my first meal after 3 days.
And you had a Big Mac, right?
No, of course.
I'm kidding.
I had a piece of homemade sourdough bread that had been frozen the night before.
Yeah.
I could talk about food a lot more. We could have a whole segment on foods you should and shouldn't eat.
That'd be good.
But I had a piece of sourdough bread with avocado and some great spices with a lot of olive oil and salt, great salt. And that was my first meal after 3 days of not eating. I ate, minimally. It was a simulated Prolon fast, which I love Prolon. I did a 3-day, not a 5-day fast, but it gives you a lot of mental clarity. We're bogged down not only by social media, but we're bogged down by food and bad food and overeating. It just takes a toll on you. Your body's like struggling to digest it, and especially digest things that shouldn't even been there to begin with. But
let me ask you this question. I had heard before, and I don't know if it's true or not. You may not know if this is true or not. I don't know. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But my question is, I heard somewhere, I can't remember where it was from, that this idea of 3 meals a day is not something that necessarily our bodies are designed to eat that way.
I would agree.
Do you have some input on that?
I have a lot of input on that.
Yeah.
I feel 2 meals is the right amount. I feel have so much more clarity when I just eat 2 meals. I don't, but now everyone's different. Some people are need to have that meal first thing in the morning when they wake up. That's fine, but then stop eating earlier in the day. And what a lot of people do is they eat their first meal at 7 in the morning, then a big lunch, and then a dinner again. And I just feel, unless you're really burning a lot of calories throughout the day, it's just too much.
Well, especially with how our culture's changed.
Right, exactly.
We have a lot more jobs that are, quote, white collar, and we're sitting at a desk and wherever. We're not actively out physically.
Right.
Right.
Well, sitting, is equated to smoking now.
Really?
Yes, they actually have said that sitting for long periods of time is actually just as bad for your body as smoking.
Is that right?
Yes. So sedentary lifestyle is a no-go. You can't do that. I use the Oura Ring, and every once in a while on my phone, it sends me a reminder, stand up, you're sitting too long. So, is that what it takes? Maybe, but to remind you need to stand up and move around a little bit. Having a sedentary lifestyle is probably one of the worst things you could do. That, processed foods, and listening to some of these crazy people on the internet about what you should do.
You're putting your brain in a constant place of just fog.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
It's crazy. Well, I'm gonna give you the last second to last word here. Is there anything final? And I would love to do a show. We'll have to have Leo set that up for us on, foods you should and shouldn't eat. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
What is a final thought that you'd like to share with those watching, listening? This is an encouragement, ways that they can get involved in kind of sharing this story for women throughout the country.
Well, you are in investment, and there is no better investment than your health. There just isn't. You can't do anything. You can't travel. You can't enjoy your family. You can't enjoy good food. You can't do anything if you're unhealthy. So, that is what you should be focusing on. Saving money, but saving your health. So by doing that, take small steps, eat clean, create a clean home, and be around clean people. Stay around people who you want to be like. It's super important. The blue zones, Dan Buettner talks about in the book. Social interaction is super important.
Yeah.
But I will add to that in that being around the right people is super important. We spoke about this off camera for your own kids. You want to be surrounded by people you want to be like.
Yeah.
And you want your kids to be around people you want to be like. That's mental health.
Yeah.
And that's part of health in general.
Yeah.
So motivate yourself to eat better, be better, and be around better people.
Love it. Susan, thanks for taking some time to share.
Thank you.
Loved
it's always good to be here.
Good to see you. Hey, listen, as you're watching this, I want to challenge you to take this show and share it, or this clip that you may have seen, but share it with somebody that needs to hear it. Listen, we have a lot of dead time, a lot of times in our day. You can be listening to this in your car. You can put it in your buds while you're working out at the gym, whatever it may be, but just put this kind of content not only in your ear. I'm going to challenge you to have your kids listen to it. So that way it's not you just telling them, hey, we need to eat this way or that way. It's you sharing a thought that's not necessarily from you to maybe help empower you to share the message with them, with your friends that you're connecting with. Share it with them. Why? Because again, as Susan mentioned, it's your circle. It's what it looks like. And if you can have people in your corner that get what you're getting along the way, and you all are taking that journey together, we'll call it to be empowered, clean, and have a clean and healthy lifestyle, it's going to just make your journey that much easier. So listen, be blessed. Have fun. We'll talk to you next show.